Yeah, they just remember to then fade out the thing.
Nobody doesn't like Jim Donovan.
All right, let's get into it. It's the Donovan Live Postgame Show. It is the schedule release edition. Good evening, everyone. Along with Jim Donovan, the voice of the Browns, I'm Dave DeNatale. Somebody said to me, Jimmy, as we were kind of getting ready to go tonight, the vibe around Cleveland and around Browns fans is kind of tonight like it is on draft night. And it's amazing how when the football team starts to win, the schedule and feeling like you're one step closer to the regular season, that has a lot more, as the lights go out, that has a lot more value and a lot more meaning, I think, for fans than the draft does.
Yeah, and I think definitely this year, I mean, the Browns don't have a first-round pick, and so on draft night, you're going to be waiting until presumably, unless they make a big deal and get back into the first round, you're going to be waiting a whole day.
Right.
You're going to be waiting until Friday, and they wouldn't have until the 49th overall pick, so the 17th pick on the second day in the second round, until you would pick a player. Now, the other thing is that the draft isn't, I mean, it's always necessary, but it's not as absolutely necessary this year because the Browns have such a better roster and have made it even better during the offseason through the trades and through free agency. So, yeah, everybody's been waiting for this. I think everybody realized at the end of the year last year when the networks were kind of scrambling at the end of the season to get a Browns game because of Baker Mayfield and the way the team was playing. And remember, they jockeyed around for that last game. In Baltimore, CBS moved things around. The Browns got moved to a 4:30 kickoff time. Their featured game, I think at that point in time you knew no matter what happened in that game, and of course the Browns lost that game, but I think the seeds had been put down that, hey, listen, they're going to be pretty good next year. They're going to be an attractive team, so let's feature them.
Yeah.
And I think that as the schedule has come out, they are certainly featured.
Yeah, 4 primetime games. Let's run them down for you. And by the way, you can follow along at WKYC.com as the lights come back on here in perfect timing. The season opener will be September the 8th, Sunday afternoon at First Energy Stadium, 1 o'clock kick. The Tennessee Titans, Marcus Mariota and company come into town. We had thought that week 1 might be a Monday night game against the New York Jets. Hold that thought, but because of Odell Beckham and a couple of things on social media last week, we thought that maybe the Browns might get Monday night for their first game, but instead they get a homer on a Sunday against Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I think there's a lot behind this. I think, number one, as much as the networks and the NFL thinks that the Browns are going to be a very, very exciting team and a very good team as we come into this season, I think this was kind of a prove-it game. So before you put them in big-time primetime games, I think that they probably give them kind of a game to get going. And remember now, the Browns have only won the opening game since coming back in 1999, only once. They beat the Baltimore Ravens. I think that was in 2004. And they've had a tie, but they've lost every other game. So this is a winnable game.
Yep.
Okay, you're at home. If you're going to be the team that everybody expects, you should certainly go into this game, play well, and win. Now, the other thing about the Jets game being on the Monday night the next week, it's the 50th anniversary of Monday Night Football, and the Browns and Jets played the first ever Monday Night Football game in Cleveland, and the Browns beat the Joe Namath Jets that night, and the tradition of Monday Night Football was born. So you can celebrate that. But the other thing I think is that because I think they want that to be a standalone game.
Yep, I do too.
And you got to go back to the first Monday night of the year, every year. ESPN will have a doubleheader. They'll have an early game on the East Coast and then a late game. Typically, it used to be the Raiders would be playing the late game. And both games become watered down.
Right.
Because the early game starts too early. It
Right.
starts at like 7 o'clock, and the late game goes too late for people that are got to get up because it doesn't kick off until after 10 o'clock. So I think they wanted, if they are going to celebrate the 50th anniversary, and they are, I think they wanted it to be a standalone game. So for the two reasons of let's really see what the Browns have And then let's make the Jet game a standalone game. I think that's why it's the 1-2 Tennessee, then the Monday night game.
Then the Monday nighter. So 8 days later, the Browns will play Week 2 at MetLife Stadium in New York against the Jets on Monday Night Football, and it'll be an 8:15 kickoff. And that will be Beckham returning to his old stomping grounds, his old stadium, now as a member of the Browns against the other New York team, the Jets. But that's an interesting game. You've got 2 new coaches. You've got the quarterback class of 2018 locking up, and it was a great. You know what? You called it last year. It was a tremendous game last year between the Browns and Jets. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I think they wanted to put this game on the schedule again as a primetime game.
Yeah, you have 2 of the rising young quarterbacks in the league, and they went head-to-head rather unexpectedly last year because Baker Mayfield didn't start the game, but thank heavens he finished the game when Tyrod Taylor went out hurt, and the Browns won the game, and you have Sam Darnold on the other side. The other thing is you have Greg Williams.
Yes.
Is now the defensive coordinator who didn't get the Browns head coaching job after he was the interim head coach of the team and rode the team pretty hard and pretty well and effectively down near the end of the year. And he was really eliminated from the head coaching search pretty early. I mean, he got the first interview, and I think he knew pretty quickly that he wasn't going to get the second call for an interview or the big call to become the head coach. And here's a guy that was his assistant,
right,
getting the head coaching job in Freddie Kitchens. You also have Adam Gase going in there, like you mentioned, and you have Le'Veon Bell coming back.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have Le'Veon Bell coming back after not playing, sitting out all of last year, away from the Steelers, and then signing with the New York Jets. So he hasn't played football in a ton of time. It's got a lot of storylines.
Yeah, really interesting Monday night game for Week 2, and the Browns will stay in prime time for Week 3. They'll come back to First Energy Stadium on Sunday night, September the 22nd, against the NFC champion Los Angeles Rams. Sunday night football for the first time since 2008. When they played the Steelers, right?
And lost 10-6, on a terrible night. It was a really bad, windy, stormy night. Amazing storms that blew through because, as you mentioned, it was in September, and the Browns did nothing in the game. And the Steelers only did enough to win and won the game 10-6. But, Sunday Night Football, remember, is very picky.
Yes.
NBC wants the best game every Sunday night. They want the best game because they only get one, and they pay, the rights fee that the other networks pay to have 7 or 8 games on a Sunday afternoon. So they want the cream of the crop. So the Browns have been snubbed many times, although I'll go back to last year at the end of the year. There was heavy consideration, and I think if they look back on it now, it would have been a better decision had NBC been able to flex the Browns-Ravens game into the Sunday night slot. CBS got it into the 4:30 slot. Remember, they got a play-in game. The Titans played to get into the playoffs, which they did because they won, but it was a terrible game. And the Browns-Ravens games was amazing. But the Browns really haven't been under consideration for Sunday Night Football since 2000.
Until now.
So, but Dino, if the Browns come back home from New York and they are 2-0, the atmosphere in Cleveland for a Sunday night game against a great team like the Rams is going to be unbelievable.
And I mean, if you're into that thing, the odds makers already have the Browns as a 5-point favorite against the Titans. And, I would think if they win that game, they'd probably be a favorite against the Jets. I mean, Jimmy, they could very successfully be 2-0 for that Rams game. And again, it's a game with storylines. You've got a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the Rams that came so close to winning last year. Again, you've got young, up-and-coming emerging quarterbacks, emerging stars. You've got Gurley, and you've got, it's just, to me, that's, again, a signature-type game for the Browns to kind of introduce themselves, this new generation of Browns to introduce themselves to a national audience.
Yeah, and see, this is where Odell Beckham Jr. will play significantly because he's used to playing in big games. I mean, the Giants didn't have great teams when he was there. He had one good year at 11-5 when they made it to the playoffs. But the Giants are always a primetime team. I mean, they're the Giants. Usually they're the kickoff game on the Sunday night part of the opening weekend for NBC. They typically play the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so he's been in those kind of games. So, whereas this is going to be new for a lot of the Browns, And I know a lot of them played in big games in college, but this is different now. This is going to be a great atmosphere down there, and I just think it's deserving, and I think that NBC will be very excited to have them.
I do too. Now, the first division game for the Browns in the AFC North will come the following week as the Browns will hit the road on Sunday, September 29th. Those aforementioned Baltimore Ravens, it'll be that rematch from that great game at the end of last year, 1 o'clock start time. And the Ravens are an interesting team, Jimmy, because, they're going to stay right now with Lamar Jackson at the quarterback. They traded Flacco, and we saw that, they can move the football offensively doing that kind of style with Jackson, but can they sustain it? By this point, you're going to be 4 weeks into a new season, and the book's out on Lamar, and that's going to be interesting to see how the Browns have adjusted defensively when they go back to Baltimore.
Yeah, because they had trouble with him. There's no doubt about it, and I think they made some defensive changes in their roster because they saw that. I mean, I think they thought that they got gashed, not on the wide side of the field on either side. They got gashed right up the middle. I mean, he really hurt them, and so did a couple of really kind of journeyman running backs that played for the Ravens that day. And the Browns then went out and got Sheldon Richardson to come in, and this is one of the reasons they did that. And who knows what else they're going to do in the way of the draft and how, Steve Wilkes is going to orchestrate this defense. You're right about, the book is out. The book was out really the following week after the Browns played the Ravens because the Ravens made the playoffs, but the Chargers totally dominated Jackson in the playoff game, and really there was a lot of thought that really John Harbaugh probably made kind of a mistake that he didn't lift him and take him out and put Flacco in because the game was still kind of hanging there, and he really struggled in that game. So, but again, kind of a matchup of the future, Baker Mayfield against Jackson if they're going to stay with him. And I assume they will. They went out and got Mark Ingram in the offseason. Great running back from the Saints, former, Heisman Trophy winner. There'll be Heisman trophies all over the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how about that?
Absolutely. Now, for the third time in 5 weeks, the Browns will be on primetime football again. Week 5 is October 7th, a Monday nighter in San Francisco at Levi Stadium against the 49ers. That means I won't see Jimmy will be flying back at 5 in the morning on Tuesday. 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan. They're a team that I think not where I think they probably aren't where they thought they were going to be at this point yet in the NFC West with the Garoppolo and the investment they made in him. But they're a young team, and they feel pretty good out there.
Yeah. Now they were last year kind of in the position that the Browns are in as we talk here tonight. They were going to be the really exciting team coming into the year this year, and they were put on the primetime schedule a number of times. But because Garoppolo went down so early in the year with that ACL injury and was lost for the season, their season fell apart, and really they were flexed out of a couple of national primetime appearances because they were not going to be competitive games. The other thing to remember coming into this game, Kyle Shanahan, of course, who left the Browns awkwardly after 1 year and did such a great job with their running game and then had the 32-point PowerPoint plan up on the board to tell Jimmy Haslam why he wanted out. And the other thing is the Browns beat them to Odell Beckham Jr.
That's right.
The 49ers thought that they knew they wanted him. They thought they had a better deal, but the Giants took the Browns deal instead, and John Lynch was kind of stymied that he didn't get a second crack at making the deal with Dave Gettleman, the general manager of the New York Giants. So that's a storyline going into that game.
But it illustrates what you were talking about. The league, everybody's intrigued by the Cleveland Browns and all the changes and all the upgrades. So, I mean, they really stacked the Browns, visibly in these first 5 games. And if the Browns play, I mean, it's unfortunately, it's the way it goes. If the Browns play well, there are more opportunities to come. There are going to be opportunities anyway, but there may be more flexing opportunities to come. But if the Browns turn into the 49ers and, aren't, the team that we hope they're going to be, well, then second half of the season, people will say, well, yeah, we told you so, and you won't be on national TV as much. But that's three primetime games in 5 weeks. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, because in the past, and for many, many years, I mean, the Browns have been a standard 1 o'clock kickoff, no matter where they were playing, because, they just weren't a big-time team that you thought was going to be able to bring in a national audience. But that has dramatically changed since Baker Mayfield came on the field against the Jets.
Last game for the Browns before they'll go on the bye is back home. So it'll be a long flight home from San Francisco. Quick turnaround. They'll be back in action on a Sunday afternoon, October the 13th in Week 6. They'll entertain Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. A team we don't usually get to see, like this until every 3 or 4 years. But Pete Carroll and company, they gave Russell Wilson a big contract here recently, a huge contract, and they feel like they're ready to reestablish themselves as one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yeah, now they have, they've lost some people, that in the offseason. They're an interesting team. I mean, they really are, because I think when they won that Super Bowl and then they came back and really should have won the next one. I mean, they had a brain cramp on the goal line against the Patriots and threw that interception. That interception really, I think, has really ruined them.
Yep.
I really think there's a problem there. I think that they've had a tough time overcoming that. They really have. I think there's been a little bit of a dip in confidence in Pete Carroll, in what he has done inside that locker room.
Well, you're right. He doesn't have the swag. He doesn't have the swagger that I think he had when he was the head coach at USC, and certainly these first couple of years when he was in Seattle. Because success has just come to him. He's always found a way to be successful.
Yeah, Dino, I think the last time the Seahawks were here in Cleveland, I believe Mike Holmgren was their head coach. I think that's the last time, and the Browns beat them in overtime.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was a great game. Winslow had a big game. Juravicius had a big game in that game, and then the Browns won the game. Phil Dawson, I think, kicked the winning field goal. So I think that was the year. I want to say that. Is that the year the Browns went 10-6?
I think it is.
Yeah, so I think it's way back in maybe 2007.
Yeah.
Now, we've been out there a couple of times, but Seattle hasn't
come
I don't
here
think they've come here since that time.
Yeah. We get to the bye week and we'll keep going on schedule. Brian wants to know, Jimmy, were you stunned? A little bit of snark here, but it's a good question. Were you stunned when you found out the leaked schedule last week was bogus? I mean, there's been all that talk that, on Twitter, here's the schedule, and then here's the schedule. They generally keep a pretty tight lid on it. Today, it was about early in the afternoon. Some of the games started to get leaked a little bit, but they were pretty good about keeping a leak on this.
There was a pretty good indication that at least one of the two basic schedules that were bogus were indeed bogus. When the Monday night, Sunday night games, the spelling of night was N-I-T-E. I'm pretty sure that the NFL knows that it's N-I-G-H-T.
Yes.
And the other one had them playing on Thanksgiving night.
Right.
I mean, they were just, it was, but I think that was the anticipation that everybody, and especially when Odell Beckham junior came out with that tweet last week that, hey, and I think he was referring to the opening game being back at MetLife Stadium where he played for the Giants, and that they would be playing the Jets. So I think it not surprising that those came out. But here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
It built up the anticipation for what they were going to be.
It did. Now, the legit schedule resumes after the bye week. The Browns get back to it on Sunday, October the 27th. They will be on the road in New England at Foxborough against the world champion Patriots. That's going to be a 4:25 game. You mentioned this on Channel 3 News at 6. I mean, CBS really wanted that game. They wanted Baker v. Brady. They wanted this game as kind of their game of the week. And, I mean, it's not a primetime game per se, but it may as well be for CBS. And
it is.
I mean, Jim Nantz talked about it, I know, with our guy Tony Grossi earlier in this offseason, that he was hoping that CBS could make that game work, and they did.
Yeah, because there were a lot of people that thought maybe the New England Patriots would get their celebration game to celebrate their Super Bowl championship at home. Now, remember, this is different this year because usually the Super Bowl championship team will play in the Thursday night kickoff game. But they're not doing it that way this year. They're giving that game to the Bears and Packers because of the 100th anniversary of the NFL or the league. And so the Patriots get the Sunday night game. And still, a lot of people thought, hey, that's going to be the Browns against the Patriots. CBS really wanted that game. They wanted that game protected. Everybody wanted that game. Yeah. Monday night wanted it. Sunday night wanted it. Yep. They didn't want it early, though. I think they wanted to see how the Browns would be, and then CBS protected it. And it's interesting, Dino. They call that a primetime game.
Yes.
So, because it's got a special kickoff time. It's got its own kickoff time at 4:30.
Yeah.
And so they call that their protected game, just like Fox calls it when they have it, their America's game.
Yeah, because it leads right into their primetime, and I mean, they value that as a primetime game. So Mr. Nance and company will see the Browns on the 27th of October against the Patriots. Following Sunday, another road game for the Browns on Sunday, November 3rd in Denver against the Broncos. And again, that'll be a late start time at 4:25. And I don't know what to make of Denver, Jimmy, because, they still have the great defense, but, I mean, they can't get anything put together offensively since Peyton Manning retired. And they're going to, they look like a team, again, that we watched them last year offensively that – I'm not really sure what direction they're going to go.
Well, they're going to go with Joe Flacco. So, I mean, we'll see him. And, he
good luck with that.
He probably had his greatest game in the NFL out in that stadium as a Raven.
That's
Remember,
right.
he beat Peyton Manning and the Broncos on an amazing pass that got them into overtime, and then they ended up winning the game. The other thing, Dino, is this could be the first game Kareem Hunt is available because he'll have an 8-game suspension. And, he will have served the 8 games after the New England game. Yeah. This is game 9. They'll have a little wiggle time there, but he'll be on the horizon.
Is that game 8? And I think, is that game, Denver is the 8th game, I think? Is that right?
You're right, yeah. So that would be his last game.
Yeah, and then Buffalo, the game with Buffalo on the 10th. November 10th, back at First Energy Stadium. It's going to be, at that point, I'm sure, get a little chilly in the air. 1 o'clock start time against the Buffalo Bills. And, that could certainly be the first time we see the young man from Willoughby as a Cleveland Brown against the Bills, which are always, when the Browns and Bills used to play, there were always, in the last decade, there were always those low-scoring games and the snow games and things like that. But a lot more offense maybe this time around when these two teams play.
Yeah, and again, you'll have a you have a young quarterback matchup here. Josh Allen is he's going to be the Buffalo Bills guy, and Baker Mayfield should be really rolling at that point in time. And now this is where you have to start winning.
Yes,
I mean this is where you win at home, and you start racking up wins. Yeah. And you start making a case for yourself to make a stretch run and get in the playoffs.
Yeah, because here's where it gets interesting. You've noticed, to this point, we've gone 9 games. There's only one division game to that point. That was against the Ravens back in September. Now you get to a Thursday night game on November the 14th, and now you're going to start to hear Jimmy and I talk about division games. They're really going to start to pick up here in this last third of the season. First look at the Steelers will be on the Thursday, November 14th. That's an 8:20 start time. It's going to be on the NFL Network. It's also going to be on Fox. We'll see Joe Buck and Troy Aikman here for that game.
Yeah, and who knows what we'll see. I mean, I think the Steelers are a mystery team. There were, not a lot of good things happen, and it really happened in their locker room, on their sidelines. They were okay out on the field, but it leaked out onto the field. So the Antonio Brown, the Le'Veon Bell situation, the Ben Roethlisberger situation with Antonio Brown, it was a mess, really. Mike Tomlin, did he have control of the team? So the Steelers, because the Browns are getting so much attention right now, the Steelers are kind of quiet, and they have to be put back together. So it will be interesting how they play. Now, they will play the Patriots in that opening game in Foxborough this year. So you'll get a good look at them. I mean, I don't know what we're going to see with the Steelers. I mean, are they rebuilding? maybe as much as the Steelers ever rebuild, they might be having to tweak some things this year.
But that'll be a first look at the Steelers, which is so rare. Usually we see that with the Steelers, if not week one, very early in the season, not so much this year. On November 24th, so the Browns will have a 10-day break after that Steeler game. They'll come back to action on Sunday, November 24th. It'll be a home game against the Miami Dolphins. Jarvis Landry will face his old team.
Yeah, but not his old coach. So
No,
he'll be
that's right.
Brian Flores is down there now, the former New England defensive coordinator. Now, this is one of the teams that a lot of people feel, and I don't like using the word, but a lot of people use the word. A lot of people feel that that the Dolphins might be a team that tanked the year to get what they want in the draft and to get as high as they possibly can. That they're into a major rebuild. I mean, they've had trouble getting free agents. Right. They had trouble getting assistant coaches. Yep. Yeah. I mean, he ended up taking a bunch of New England coaches with him. But he couldn't take them all, because there's stipulations on that. Again, a game, this is where you start building wins.
Yeah, it's a home game late in the season or late in November. This is when if you're going to be a playoff team, this is when you really start to kind of pick things up and you go through the final. At this point, after that Dolphin game, you've got 5 games to go in the season. 4 of the 5 are going to be against your division. I mean, we talk about it over and over. You want to win the AFC North. You want to be a legitimate playoff contender. You got to win your home games. Right. You got to win in your division. Browns will see the Steelers again, just like it's the gift that keeps on giving. Heinz Field on Sunday, December the 1st. It's going to be a late start time. Again, this is when you're the Browns, and this is what happens. You have some cachet. You play a 4:25 game on CBS on that December 1st game.
Now, you could be into a situation where you could get flexed. You could start getting flexed at that point. But, I mean, that's a premier game. And if you're going to be a really good team, you have to start winning at Heinz Field.
Yes.
And that's been a problem, whether it was Three Rivers Stadium or Heinz Field. I mean, they've only won once over there at Heinz Field. And they're going to have to start doing that. Yep. And I think that they realize that. I mean, they went over there last year, and that's really where the wheels came off for Hugh Jackson. He was fired right after that, and all kinds of shuffling went along with the organization. I think it's also the time, Dino, where they felt when they looked out on the field. Remember, that's the game that afterwards John Dorsey told Hugh Jackson, your team quit on you when the ESPN article came out. The other thing, I think they took a look at Jamie Collins in that game and went, you know what? This is where we need a great player. Yep. He's not a great player, play in and play out. This is where you have to start doing it. You have to win over there. Yeah. You have to start winning over there. You need a new tradition.
Yeah, haven't won there since 2003. The only time since that stadium's been operating that the Browns have won over there, a Sunday night game, if I remember right, that they won.
Tim Couch.
Yeah.
Orange pants.
Yeah, the orange pants. That's right. Back home, the Browns will be on Sunday, December the 8th, a 1 o'clock start. Our first look at the Cincinnati Bengals, another team with a new head coach, and you would expect, although you still have some veterans on that team, that this is a game the Browns should win. They should beat the Cincinnati Bengals.
I think so. I mean, again, it will be interesting. I mean, they had a tough time getting a coach. They waited because they got him off of the Rams staff. He had a heck of a time. We talked about this when the Browns, have gone for coaching searches and ended up with a first-time head coach. They struggled to get assistants to come with them. Now, Freddie Kitchens didn't. I mean, Freddie Kitchens got a great staff built around him. Down in Cincinnati, they struggled getting it there. I don't know if it's money. I don't know if it's just people not having a great deal of confidence in the direction that they're heading. But I would, at least on the outside, Dino, they look like a team that's in a major rebuild. Yep. I mean, a lot of people, they still have A.J. Green. They still have Andy Dalton. I don't know if they're all in on Dalton, but
I don't think they are.
Yeah, so, I mean, it will be interesting to see the condition that they're in at that time, because by that time, you're in December and you know where teams are going.
Exactly. Now, the Browns will have another long road game the week after. They'll fly out to Arizona on Sunday, December the 15th. 4:05 will be the start time against the Cardinals. I wonder who the Browns who will be quarterbacking for the Cardinals in that game.
Yeah,
because I don't think it's going to be Josh Rosen, who they just used a first rounder on last year.
Exactly. I mean, all signs a week away from the draft now seem to point that they're going to draft Kyle Murray out of Oklahoma. And remember, he took over for Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma. And, I mean, you have a fascinating situation there. I mean, the coaching situation is fascinating. You know, Kingsbury is the head coach after getting fired at Texas Tech. Wow, I have to tell you, the Cardinals, plus, you know, you have a revenge game there. Steve Wilkes was fired.
Yes.
Rather unceremoniously.
He's going to have that. He'll have his defense fired up at that point.
You know, again, where the Browns are, where the Cardinals are, vastly different places. You have an opportunity to really, you know, come back home then and kind of end the season in a good way against two division opponents, but put yourself in a position. I think, you know, at that time it could start to get very, very exciting around here.
Yeah, I mean, that leads up after the Cardinals game. Browns back home, next to last game of the season, the home regular season finale. The Ravens in town, 1 o'clock at First Energy Stadium. So at that point, I mean, you're in week 16, but, you know, for the Browns, it's their 15th game. And, you know, at that point, you're sitting there going, boy, could we be 9-5, 8-6, something like that, you know, where, you know, you're really looking now, you know, we always see the graphics, you know, teams that if the season ends, you're in, and this is where you are in the playoff chase. You know, this is where the stretch run is, Jimmy, and you know, we saw last year. You know, you have the opportunity. You know, if you can put yourself in it. The Browns played well in December last year.
Yeah, they did, and the lesson to be learned by the Browns from last year in December, and hopefully they won't have put themselves in that position this year. If you remember when they went out and they won that tremendous game on the Saturday night in Denver, when Peppers got the sack at the end of the game, and they ended up hanging on and beating the Broncos. And they flew home, and they got home the next day, and they needed help. I mean, they were still alive in the playoff chase, but they needed help. And here they were. They come off a great win, and they're getting set to play the Bengals the next week, and they're going to fill the stadium, and they're going to beat the Bengals, which they did. But remember then, they needed the Steelers to lose to the Patriots, and the Patriots played awful that day. Worst game of the year, really, that they played. And the Steelers stayed alive, and that kind of knocked the Browns out. There were other things that needed to happen. Everything that needed to happen didn't happen, which is the lesson that you have to have you have to take care of yourself. Can't be reliant on other teams. And so now you're down at that point in the season where you should be in a position that you're controlling your own fate.
Destiny. That's what you want. I mean, we saw it worked out well for the Browns in 2002. It did not work out well for them in 2007, nor did it last season. So, well, hopefully history will be kinder to the Browns in that respect. And then Bengals on the road in Cincinnati at Paul Brown Stadium to wrap up the regular season, Week 17, on December the 29th. And at that point, I mean, God, you're sitting there, you're thinking, could that be a play-in to win a division, the play-in to get to a wild card, the play-in to, you know, I mean, have a home game, you know, a home playoff game. So much could be riding on that game. And I mean, people always talk about games in Cincinnati, and when the Browns have been relevant, and you think about 1980, they clinched the AFC Central in Cincinnati. 1986, they clinched the AFC Central in Cincinnati, routed the Bengals that day.
First play of the game.
Yeah, right from the get-go, and never looked back. So history has shown the Browns in meaningful games have gone to Cincinnati, have played well. 2007, it didn't work out like that.
No.
The Bengals won in the game the Browns really should have and could have won. It didn't work out for them, but Cincinnati could be the team that stands between the Browns and some history.
You know, and there's been that door has opened both ways. It's gone both ways. In 2007, you're right. Derek Anderson picked a bad day to have his worst day when he threw all kinds of interceptions, and the Browns lost control of their own fate. If they had won that day, they were in the playoffs. They came home the following week. They blew San Francisco out. But because they had lost to the Bengals, Tennessee kind of took over advantage, and the Titans then got a gift win against the Colts in the Sunday night game after the Browns had picked up their 10th win of the season earlier that day against the 49ers, and they got edged out in a tiebreaker. And so they didn't make the playoffs, and it was because of the Cincinnati game. And I believe Marvin Lewis's either first or second year, the Browns went down there, and maybe you can remember the game with me here. And the Browns went down last game of the season. Bruce Arians' last game as the offensive coordinator.
Yes.
And not Lee Suggs. It was a running back that had an amazing game for the Browns in that game. Might have been Suggs. I don't know. Anyway, I think it was Suggs.
I think it was Suggs.
Lee Suggs had an amazing game and beat the Bengals and knocked them out of the playoffs. And Bruce Arians was fired as the offensive coordinator after the game. Butch Davis was the head coach. So it's happened both ways.
Yeah.
It really has. But it's an interesting place to end.
Yeah, because, for the Bengals,
Battle of Ohio.
Battle of Ohio,
Yeah.
and the Bengals will treat it as a big game if they're out of the playoff hunt. So that'll be interesting.
The other thing, Dino, when we went down there last year, remember that was where they ended the playoff streak.
Yes.
The road game losing streak.
Yep.
Remember, they were on the cusp of NFL history.
Yeah.
Of like 25 losses in a row on the road. And they went down there that day, and they just took the Bengals apart. And I'll tell you this, there were more Browns fans at that game than there were Bengals fans. And the Bengals were technically still in the hunt. They were, in the group of teams that were still in the hunt.
And how often have we seen, certainly with the Steelers, but also with the Bengals, you go to First Energy Stadium in December and the Browns are out of it and they're hosting, the Bengals, sometimes the Ravens, but the Bengals and the Steelers, and there are more of them than there are of us.
Right.
And you sit there and you go, how can this be? This is our city. This is our Browns team. But now things have changed. Somebody asked us, and I apologize I didn't get the name, Jimmy and Dino, do you think the Browns could win double-digit games?
I think they can win 10.
I do too.
Yeah, I think
too.
10 is a reasonable number. And I'm thinking 10 would get them there.
Yes.
Okay, I really am. I think 10 would win the division.
I think 10 gets you the division. I don't know if it gets you a bye, because remember you got the Chiefs and the Patriots to contend with. I don't know if it gets you the bye to play in the divisional, but I do think it'll get you the division crown.
Yeah, and I think that from 7 to 10, which is where they were last year, 7 wins, and if we're thinking 10 this year, you could probably look back and say, well, they could have easily won 10 last year. I mean, if Gonzalez makes the kick against the Steelers, there's one. If they make a kick
against the Saints,
there's two. And there's probably another one.
If they tackle against, if they make a couple of tackles against the Ravens.
And the other thing, really, that game in Oakland, they got a couple of bad calls in the game. really a couple of bad calls. There's 3 and they're at 10, okay? And they go to the playoffs. But still, I think that's going to be the major thing right now. Mm-hmm. Can they handle the expectations of this schedule and of what people think, at least on paper, they are?
Because again, you're playing 3 primetime games in your first 5 weeks. Spotlight's going to be on Mayfield, Beckham, Garrett, Freddie Kitchens. Everything. And I think they have the right attitude and mentality, certainly with Mayfield, and reading some of what Freddie Kitchens said in the release with the schedule, that it doesn't really matter when we know who we have to play, we just got to go out there and play them, which is coach speak. But that's going to be the big thing. Can they win that mental game before they even go out and play physically on the field?
Yeah, that's it. It's the expectation game. And some teams handle it, and some teams don't. From 2007 to 2008, they did not handle it. Mm-hmm. They were terrible in 2008. And you could see it right away in training camp. Yeah. Training camp was not good. They were not good in the preseason, and everybody kept saying, don't worry, by the time they open up against the Cowboys, they'll be fine. They were a mess, and they were a mess all year long, and it led to a very disappointing season. So now none of these guys were around then, but I think what I saw at the end of the year last year, when they lost that last game in Baltimore, there was a look of resolution on their faces that they knew they were better than the Ravens and probably better than a lot of teams at that time. They were playing very, very well. Yeah. At that time, they were a playoff team in the way that they were playing. And even in that game in Baltimore, they let that slide away. Joseph missed a very makeable field goal right at the end of the first half. They didn't tackle, like you say. I think that right now that's the way you got to look at it. Can they take that step? That's a big step.
It's a huge step. People talk about it. We were asked, do you think the Browns can win 10 or 11 games? and from a number standpoint, you say, well, geez, they went from winning 0 to winning 7. Well, isn't it easier to win 7, go from 7 to 11? No, it's harder. It's harder to go +4 like that because of, you're going to get everybody's best game. I mean, you're not fooling anybody anymore, especially when you're playing on national TV. You're not fooling anybody. I mean, everybody's going to be gunning for Baker. Everybody's going to be gunning for, Garrett's going to get double teamed.
Right.
Beckham's going to get double teamed. I mean, everybody's going to be gunning for the Brown stars.
Yeah, but it's a great offense on paper. It's going to keep defensive coordinators up at night because they just have so much firepower right now. And I'm not saying that, that they're going to add even more to it in the draft. I don't know if there's room for it, to be quite honest with you. I mean, they really are loaded offensively. And so as you look to next week and you look to the draft, what do you look at? And I think you look at cornerback. They need some depth in the secondary. They may want to get their own young safety in the secondary. They probably need to get into the linebacker group.
I was going to say linebacker. They got Collins is gone. They got to figure out what they want to do there.
And we'll also see if John Dorsey follows the path of Ron Wolf, Elliot Wolf's dad, whose policy always was when he was with the Packers, even when you have Brett Favre, you always draft a quarterback. Yes. You always get a quarterback and have a young quarterback, your own young quarterback on the roster. And we'll see if he does that because he's got Baker Mayfield and he's the guy. There's no question about it. But maybe they get a young quarterback. But I really think the draft will be influenced over on the defensive side from what they've done.
It's a long season, and your expectation is with your offensive line, you can keep Baker upright for 16 games. But history shows that's not always easy to do, and I think you have Stanton. I mean, that's why you went out and you invested in a veteran, because you wanted a guy that could help Mayfield, but also, if you need to play him, if you need to plug him in for something, you feel like, okay, he's got some experience. But I agree with you. I think they wouldn't mind having somebody else to develop.
I think so. I mean, it's not a bad idea. They had said anyway they wanted to have 4 quarterbacks in camp. They only have 3 now because they signed the guy from the AAF. But I think that, if they go by what they said, 4 quarterbacks to handle the load anyway of training camp, they would need 1 more.
Yeah. 2 quick questions here on Facebook, and then we'll start to wrap things up here on our special schedule reveal show here on Facebook Live. Thanks to everybody for being with us. Jay wants to know, do you see the Browns making a move late in the first round, maybe packaging, whether it's Duke Johnson or a future draft pick, to do so if somebody's there that they like?
Well, again, they could. I think that they probably, and they would be definitely targeting a player. I mean, they would have a player that they do not feel confident is going to be there at 49 when they finally have a pick. So, if you see them go up, now it's expensive to do it, and Duke Johnson isn't going to get you up there.
No,
I mean you're going to have to give some picks. And the other thing is, I think you look at that right now, and again, I don't know if you can trade Duke Johnson right now because just the numbers in the running back room, because Kareem Hunt cannot play
until
the first 8 games of the season. Yeah. And it would be great when he plays, but you're going to need another running back in there. And right now they really don't have that. They have this kid, Hilliard, but I don't think he's ready to handle that kind of workload because that particular guy is going to get workload.
Right.
Chubb is not going to play as much as you think.
Looking down at the 16 games, I mean, I know sometimes it becomes a blur as the guy who's the voice of the Browns, but is there 1 or 2 that you're really like, I can't wait for this game, or I can't, like, this one could be something really special?
Well, there are 3, I think, that I really am excited about. I think that Rams game here, if the scenario is that they come back and they're 2-0, just the atmosphere in Cleveland's going to be amazing. It really is. And Cleveland will handle that well and be ready. And I think that could be very special. Now you say, well, it's the Rams, but it's the Rams.
Yeah.
I mean, Aaron Donald, a lot of great
Todd
players.
Gurley, Aaron Donald,
and supposedly the next super coach. I mean,
that's right, genius.
The other thing is, I mean, New England. I mean, to see Mayfield go out there against Brady. And again, now, I don't know what the Patriots are going to look like.
Right.
I mean, they're going to look very different without Rob Gronkowski. They're going to look very different on their sideline. That's a really new coaching staff that he's breaking in. But if anybody can do it, he can do it. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
And probably one more. I think the Steelers Thursday night game, at the time of the year that it's coming, November 14th, now that could be some atmosphere in that place for that kind of a game. So if I'm Fox to have Thursday Night Football, to have the Steelers and a rebuilt, exciting Browns team, where people have said the Thursday night schedule has always been a little watered down because everybody gets a Thursday night game. That looks like a beauty.
That's a marquee.
Yeah.
And that's Week 10, and that'll be our first look at the Steelers. That Patriots game, I just remember, I go back to even something as subtle as the NFL 100 commercial that we saw at the Super Bowl, where Tom Brady hands Baker Mayfield his rings. And, you sit there and you're like, Brady is not going to give up the throne without a fight. But I remember that was the first thing I thought when the Browns beat the Chiefs, so the Patriots beat the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl, and then when they won the Super Bowl, I'm like, man, somebody's got to dethrone Belichick and Brady and knock them off the mountain as the AFC's elite team. And, the Chiefs had their chance and they couldn't do it. God, I would love to see the Browns be that team. And maybe we'll get a preview of what they could potentially do in that scenario that night or that afternoon against the Patriots.
Which will become night, too.
Yes, which will become night. You're right.
That's a tough place.
Yeah, it is.
That is a tough place to play. I mean, the last time that they went in there, they played incredibly well for 58 minutes.
Yes.
And disintegrated in the last 2 minutes and lost a 12-point lead and lost the game. And it was amazing. I mean, just recover an onside kick and it's over.
That was one of Gordon's
greatest games.
Yeah.
It was just an incredible game. But it was a Brady game.
Yeah.
It was right at the beginning of December. They don't lose in there in December. They never lose in there in December. And they went in there and they were pasting them all game long. Gronkowski ripped up his knee earlier in the game. He was carted off the field with a torn ACL. I mean, they had him, and it was incredible to watch it just so quickly, with 2 minutes to go in the game, just go up in smoke.
Evaporate.
So, I mean, that if you can win there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an incredible feather in your cap.
And that's the scenario you just mentioned. There probably is going to be a game like that this year where the Browns have a chance to win and something happens, something flukish happens, and they don't win a game. And they've got to be able to overcome adversity. And they've got to be able to, the season's so long, they've got to be able to not let one setback knock them off of this, because they've got the potential for something great.
Yeah, they do. And, a lot of these guys that were rookies last year are now into their second year. And that in itself is big. But remember how much they played in their rookie year. A lot. Mayfield ended up playing a ton.
Yes.
He set the rookie record for touchdown passes in NFL history. Chubb ended up playing a lot. Should have played more at the beginning of the year. I mean, Hugh Jackson might have held on to his job, and so would Todd Haley have.
Exactly
but they were really blockheaded about putting him in, and no slam on Carlos Hyde. But with the way Chubb was hitting big plays, I mean, how he was only getting 3 carries a game was absurd. And it was just so backwards. But all of these guys played a lot. The only guys that didn't play really were Austin Corbett and Chad Thomas.
Yeah.
And both, especially Corbett, will play a lot this year. But all of these guys, Avery played a ton.
Yes.
Denzel Ward, other than getting hurt a couple of times, played a lot. Ogunjobi played a ton. And Njoku came a long way. By the end of the year, Njoku was a better than quality tight end
He's on
in
the
the
cusp
NFL.
of being a Pro Bowl caliber player.
Higgins became a real NFL wide receiver. Now you throw Beckham into there, and you got a lot of things happening here.
Yeah, it's exciting. Okay, so we've got full coverage of the Browns' 2019 schedule, the release. A bunch of great sidebar stories as well right now for you at WKYC.com. Tonight on Channel 3 News at 11, Jimmy will run this down again, and you'll hear more from what he has to say about the schedule. Tomorrow, John Dorsey will address the media at noon, the Browns GM, before kind of a last, I'm sure he'll be asked about the schedule, but a lot of it will be draft related, so we'll have a lot more to kind of digest from that. But, it's on to the Titans. I mean, I didn't even bother to read the preseason.
Yeah, well, there's an interesting preseason game, Dino. When the Browns play the Colts in the preseason, they're going to practice against them that week. And then the game is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's weird. A Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock in Indy.
Yeah. Wow.
That's strange.
Yeah.
At least you guys get home earlier, but
Well, there you go.
That's kind of strange. All right, Jimmy, great stuff. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
hanging around
Yeah,
for this show. Thank you all for watching the 2019 NFL schedule release show right here on the Donovan Live Postgame Show on WKYC's Facebook Live.
All right.
All right.